We live in a world where history is being ignored and forgotten. When historical buildings and monuments are being torn down because they're old, falling apart, or simply seen as racist, history is being destroyed and totally forgotten. However, it is time that we open our ears and hear the cry that history is trying to tell us. History wants to tell us her story. It's time we listen, and it's time that we preserve history.
Well, the Opera House, is really a fascinating facility, especially for somebody who I have a degree in theater and have been involved in theater for many years, and to look at this Opera House and how absolutely gorgeous it is. It must have been just something unbelievable when it was first built. I love the architecture of it. I love the historical aspects of it, because theater is something that has a rich history, and the Opera House has a rich history, and so I absolutely love directing in here, because even though technologically there could be some upgrades, and those are happening, they have happened over the years, but it's just a fabulous, beautiful place to direct a production.
The Opera House has been around since 1841. This one that we're in now is 1888. The first one had a problem with a fire. They used to light this building with gas lights. Went all the way around. The first one succumbed to a gaslight fire. This one was built around 1881. Originally, this was kind of the center of town. The school system used it for all their programs. There have been churches that met in here. We do know that at one time, having studied the history of this, Charles Dickens was traveling through here, this area, and spoke from this stage. So it's had quite a history. The lady who played in Sound of Music, Eleanor Parker, actually went to Cedarville High School and started her stage career on this stage, so we claim her. Annie Oakley used to come through and do her stage show here.
And during those first years, well, many years, it was used really as a focal point for a lot of the things that were happening here in the village of Cedarville. But then sometime, I'm not really sure when, but probably like around sometime in the 50s, it just quit being used. And I have a feeling that was about the time that a lot of buildings like this just kind of quit being used in their communities.
But around, had to be around 1987, Dr. Richard Baldwin and his business class were looking for a project, and they stumbled upon getting this building on the historical register, the National Historical Register. And they researched the methodology. They went to the State Historical Society. They wrote to the National Historical Society. They got the applications. They came down here and measured the whole place and drew the plans out. Really excellent. A job that would have cost the village far more than we could have afforded, they put together. And as a result of it, I remember one day driving up to Columbus with all this documentation in hand and handing it to the director of the Historical Society. And about 2 months later, we got notice that the building had been accepted. But that was the process, and it was a lengthy one because a lot of documentation had to take place. But those students did a marvelous job, and then the Opera House Society took it over from there.
There was a lot of work done trying to get it restored, and they really, I think, wanted to get it to the natural beauty of the original building.
First of all, without getting too graphic, we had to shovel the remainders of dead pigeons and bats and sparrows and doves and everything else out of here, as well as some of the things they left behind while they were alive. So I won't go into any details with that. And that was the beginning.
Well, when it came up that they were going to restore restore the Opera House. A lot of people were very much interested and gave money to do it. I myself kind of thought they were a little delusional. I am not a person that can see things come to pass. And so I thought, oh my word, those poor people, they're going to spend all that time and effort, and they're never going to have it open for performances and stuff. But thankfully, there are people who have that vision, and they do the work, the effort, everything they can do to make it a reality.
Once they got it restored, then they started using it for other things. It certainly hasn't had the kind of use that it had back when it was used in the early 1900s, but it's still been used a lot. There have been a lot of community programs that have taken place here in the last, how long has that been? Almost 30 years. So it still gets a lot of use. And I think when people walk into the building, they say, wow, we didn't even realize a building like this existed in Cedarville. So it's a really neat place to just bring the community together.
I think the community loves the Opera House because it is central to Cedarville history. It's something that's not tied to the university or some other things that tend to kind of overshadow Cedarville's own history. And so I think the Opera House is one of those remaining vestiges, along with some of the other buildings downtown, that is, it's still an opera house. It's still in use for its original purpose. And so I feel like the community kind of rallies around it because they feel like it's their own. It's something that's tied to their history, Cedarville's history, and something that they can get behind and support and feel like it's not just, something else, another program that the university has come up with, but it's something that's theirs.
We've never had a time that I know of when community members said we don't need that or we didn't want to do that. In fact, we've had far more the other way, people calling and saying, what can we do to help? I would see it being the long-term kind of center glue for things that happen here. Something that people can focus on, rally around, know that it's theirs.
We are very, very blessed to have the Opera House. Most communities don't have their Opera House anymore. And how thankful we should be for those people who remembered coming to the Opera House, having their school plays here, and they did not want to lose the Opera House. If those people hadn't done it, it would have had to have been torn down. But they took the challenge, and it was precious to them, and they did the work.
When people enter the Opera House, I think a part of them feels like they're entering a piece of history, that they are experiencing a time gone by where this Opera House was filled with, all the gas lighting, and it had all the traveling shows coming through, and I'm sure many, many performances where it was just packed out and the audience was just thoroughly enjoying what they were seeing. And so I think, it's important to preserve these things. I mean, it's nice. When I used to direct productions at the university, I loved having that brand new theater and all the things that go with it. But yet, those things should not replace places like the Opera House. We need these things that tie us to our past, that tie us to our history, that tie us to the history of our art and what we want to do. And so hopefully the Opera House will be around for a long, long time.